Hey guys, this is Picciott with the Liberty Advisor, joined again with Chris Karabats of Zaphoid on Twitter is where you can find him. Not of Zaphoid, he is Zaphoid on Twitter. So I only took 2 seconds to mess that up, but we're going to roll with this. So what we're going to talk about today is the upcoming market, what we got to look forward to. And what we got to look forward to is Donald Trump. Actually, it's not Donald Trump, but after record rally, oil faces collapse as new feud erupts between Saudis and Russia. Monday OPEC meeting is canceled. And so I think, one of the, crazy points of this is that, Trump wants to make sure that he makes oil prices higher. And can you kind of explain the craziness of this, Chris?
This is basically, Trump is working really hard to make everything more expensive for us, because as oil goes up, everything goes up, because, well, we need oil to get food, we need oil to get anything. So this low oil price is really the highlight in this whole disaster that's going on right now, because at least it's keeping some of the prices from going up because it's cheaper to get stuff around. If that actually went up, if we were back at $60 a barrel oil, everything would just be falling apart right now with how expensive it would all be. Or at least now it's cheap to get stuff around, so we can have theoretically cheaper food and such than we otherwise would.
Yeah, I mean, and then here we are. We need to bail out the oil companies who've made all this money. And guess what? It's not like oil is going away. I mean, it's if anything, I mean, it's just more government intervention into all this stuff. I mean, the Federal Reserve should have never lent all that cheap money. The banks should have never lent all that cheap money. It's not our fault that, about, what is it, 10% of the triple C bond market. So for those who don't know, that is the lowest possible basically criteria before you're bankrupt. 10% of that money of that market are the oil companies. And then even if you take a look at the triple B bonds, which are the one notch away from being junk bonds, which is still far from triple C, but it's a very quick slide. So I mean, a lot of times you see somebody go from triple A to boom junk, and then now it's gone. And so that's what we see a lot of times continually happen.
Well, yeah, and remember that Moody's last year cut Ford to junk. I mean, there's a lot of big companies that are junk bond status now, and that's not a great place for our economy to be in. And we're all there simply because it's so much easier to borrow money now than actually save and invest. And that's the Fed's doing. The Fed has put us in the situation. This is horrible moral hazard for all the corporations who get bailout. And now we're in the situation we're in, and it's not a good situation.
Yeah, I feel like Wolf, we're in the situation room. So here we are, and then we have... I did see an article earlier today, just riffing off this one, is where it showed that Ford was urging basically a redo of Cash for Clunkers program, where that was a program where basically you could turn in perfectly good working cars. They would give you between like $2,000 and I think $4,500, and then from that, essentially it was just basically a huge giveaway to the auto manufacturers. But looking ahead to the markets this week, we've got an article over here from the New York Post that shows most Americans will stay home this month, even if lockdown lifted, according to a poll. While 87% of the American public is staying home, regardless of whether or not it's mandated by state or local municipalities, most plan on continuing to do so for all of April, according to the poll taken by the Huffington Post. Meanwhile, just 7% of Americans say they're not sheltering in place, while another 6% remain unsure. These citizens are most likely in North Dakota, South Dakota, Arkansas, Iowa, or Nebraska, which have no stay-at-home orders in place. Meanwhile, the survey shows 79% versus 9% of Americans say that the states have issued stay-at-home orders made the right decision in doing so. So, I mean, what do you think, Chris? Do you think it's the right decision? I know Luke would definitely, be down our throats and say it's definitely the right decision to stay at home. But what do you? And it's not necessarily a white or black answer. But what do you think on this?
It really isn't. I mean, I've kind of been taking coronavirus seriously since January, when China shut down their economy, because China doesn't shut down their economy to save a few thousand lives. I mean, that's not the Chinese way. They will intentionally kill thousands of people a day just to keep making cheap shoes for us. But
especially with slave labor, it's like slave labor to make cheap shoes. So you got LeBron James talking, wanting to have all these social justice warrior tweets, yet they won't address the main elephant in the room is that all their crap is made by basically slaves over in China. So
yeah, and that's a whole other topic that we could talk about for hours. So I guess that's probably shouldn't dive down that rabbit hole. But I think people should be trying to take precautions right now. I mean, I felt like an idiot yesterday because I wore a bandana because I don't have any N95 masks, but I wore a bandana to Walmart. And I hope they're going to come back in fashion because I want people to wear face coverings to stymie all the facial recognition stuff that's going around.
Well, I felt like an idiot because I left a bunch of N95 masks that I bought like 5 years ago in my shed, and then they like sort of dry rotted out. So the mask works, but then I've got to get like a new like strap or something.
Yeah, but I feel like talking about that doubles down on my tin hattiness, but whatever. I think people are right to stay at home. I don't think that they should be shutting down businesses the way they are. This is ridiculous. I mean, we have like 30,000 restaurants nationwide have already basically done. 110,000 are at risk or whatever they're calling it. I mean, all these small businesses are just going to fail. You can't shut down bits and pieces of the economy without basically shutting down the whole economy because everything is intertwined. If you need to know how a complex economy works, just read the essay I Pencil and go through that, learn about how it's an intertwined mess. And one little bit affects everything else, and nobody can manage the whole thing intelligently. That's the knowledge problem. That's why socialism and communism don't work. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But
yeah, now we've got CDC guidance on face masks coming within days, and so
yes.
Trump is saying he doesn't think that they'll be mandatory, but says if people want to wear them, they can. Trump says of the plan to help prevent the wider spread of the novel coronavirus, but they also then keep saying these timelines, and then they want to be really quick about the timelines, like, oh, it's going to be by Easter, oh, it's going to be by April 4th, oh, it's going to be, well, I guess other way around, oh, it's going to be by this date. And I think by continually short-changing what the goalpost is, that you're then probably greatly lengthening how long it's going to take. So not that I'm like advocating for some authoritarian clampdown, but if you're going to, I guess, do it, I don't know, might as well do it right. This half-assed authoritarianism that they have. So that's going to come back again. Now, obviously, I'm not advocating for any of this. I don't think that
you're a communist now, Tim. It's official.
Fascist, right?
Fascist. Sorry, you're a fascist now, Tim. But yeah, that's.
I'm a libertarian fascist, so it's okay.
I want to go back to that mask recommendation because I feel like that talks about that shows how incompetent the CDC and the FDA have been at handling this whole situation. If we were truly in a free market, we would have had free market tests out in January and February that people could have taken, so you'd have known what was happening then, and people then could have taken informed, knowledgeable decisions to isolate themselves or to wear masks or not. Instead, we had the FDA and the CDC making faulty tests, only a couple hundred of them, limiting it to just their tests. You couldn't import them, you couldn't make your own, and telling people that, oh no, don't wear masks. They'll just cause you to infect yourself by touching your face too much.
Yeah, masks they don't work. The mask goes from masks don't work to don't get everyone run out and get masks because we need to make sure doctors and nurses have them to. Oh, everybody should be wearing a mask.
Well, now they have a Texas town of Lubbock or something. Now they're fining people if they don't wear masks in public. And
just like a few months ago, they were fining you if you did wear a mask in public because of all the Antifa crap going on in like places, I think like Portland or I don't know. Maybe.
Exactly. Yeah, we're all going to be Antifa, apparently. Damn it. We're going to take all this out of context.
Well, Antifa, if Antifa wants to go rail against something, and I've been was pointing this out 4 years ago in regards to Japan. For Japan, what they're doing right now is about 87% of their ETF market, their exchange, basically their stock market, they're going in there and just buying up their stock market. So that is the merger of the state and corporations, which is fascism. So where's Antifa talking about fascism when you're actually seeing fascism? And speaking of fascists and fascism, we've got Fauci over here says lockdown will continue until there are no new cases of COVID-19, which then pertains right into our next article that says the sledgehammer approach to containment will result in phenomenal economic costs. It goes on to say the sledgehammer approach being used in most European countries and the United States is turning into a very costly mistake. And what I mean by sledgehammer is they haven't planned anything. They just have a blanket program. We're all locked in our condos or houses and can't move as the economy is shut down. And then we see that, coronavirus job losses could total 47 million. Unemployment rate might hit 32%. And that just makes me wonder. I mean, does the unemployment number still not matter? Like just Mnuchin, it was last week, told us the unemployment rate was irrelevant, I think was actually his term, Chris.
Yeah, of course it's irrelevant because they're just going to give us all the money and all the unemployment to keep things going for as long as they can. But no, it's not meaningless. What they're doing now is this, we've been in a bubble. I mean, you've been saying we've been in a bubble. I've been saying we've been in a bubble. Everybody knows we've been in a bubble for years. The corona crisis popped it, but it doesn't matter what popped it. The bubble's popped. And now they're just going to keep things as suppressed as possible. So all the bad stuff that happens, they are going to just blame on coronavirus, not on the fact that they've horribly mismanaged our economy for decades.
No, exactly, because I'm thinking that essentially initially I think the game plan was we're going to blame this on the Russians, we're going to blame this on the Chinese, we're going to have some sort of war. I think the initial game plan was to have a war with the Russians, and then that's you can see all that. I mean, now obviously it looks very very it looks very obvious if that was the case if you're studying this stuff from a geopolitical standpoint. But I remember telling an intern. It was actually right before the first, I don't know if it was like Malaysian Airlines that got shot down. There's so many news articles, I can't remember everything, but I think it was 2014. I remember telling my intern at the time that I thought the game plan was to get into a war with Russia, and then we could then blame everything on the damn Russians, that things are going great. And so that way you don't have to look at the underlying economy and acknowledge that it was all built on a foundation of crap. A swamp. I mean, literally, DC is built on a swamp, and so now so it doesn't matter that this happened to be the pin, and I think they deliberately released this to make it a pin, but that doesn't mean to say it's not a real thing and that you shouldn't take some precaution from it. But I mean, just take a look at this chart over here that shows where we're at. This was from source JP Morgan, was on Zero Hedge today. US of A is down right over here, so it shows that we still have got some pain to come. But now, contrasting this approach with Sweden. Sweden has taken a slightly different approach to coronavirus than the rest of the world, allowing life to go on as normal with a few key exceptions. And so it's going on to say that, now that they've just started limiting gatherings to 50 people as of Sunday. And I think you had an article too over here on Forbes, if you want to break this down, where it says, as Europe locks down, Sweden takes a liberal approach to coronavirus, which, I hate even when people use the word liberal because, the word liberal means nothing from what it used to mean. And so in the classical sense of liberal, I think that's what they mean, but not today's more authoritarianism version of liberal, which the Republicans are also authoritarianism. So we've got two wings of the same bird, essentially. Chris and I are both libertarians. We both are anarchist voluntarists that think the whole thing is a big joke to begin with, in case, we're going to get that in the comments of, these guys don't realize the whole thing's rigged. So I'm just preempting that because I know it's going to be there in the comments. But what does this article go on to say, Chris, with Sweden taking a more liberal approach to what's going on?
Well, they're allowing their citizens to do such reckless things like get a haircut or go to school or eat at a restaurant. I mean, these are, completely and utterly reckless things in this day and age of the coronavirus epidemic that's sweeping across the country, where instead of and now they can let people, make their own decision about how much risk they want to take individually in regards to this, which is the right answer.
Yeah, it's so liberal that we're able to now go out and maybe congregate or do something, which I guess we're not able to do that. But kind of shifting gears a little bit here, taking a look at the week forward over here. So Goldman warns of significant adverse impact on stocks as 2020 buybacks are cut in half, and this was a key central tenet of the speech I gave at Acapulco that I highly recommend you guys go on my channel. So if you guys, and I really do appreciate everyone that has been subbing. I went, 2 years, I think, having basically 20 people following me. And in the past month, I've had 991 new subscribers. So if we can get that extra 9 and get that even 1,000 number, that'd be awesome. So really appreciate, all the love on that. But yeah, as it relates to these buybacks, I was showing the chart and saying, listen, this entire market, if you take a look at who's actually been the net buyer of stocks the past 10 years, I look at retail, flat, institutions, flat. Everybody was flat. All the smart money, flat. Hedge fund, flat. Everybody flat. And then you take a look at corporations themselves, almost, let's say a hockey, more of a 45-degree angle going up, because corporations were borrowing money, using that borrowed money to then buy back their own stock, or using the Donald Trump tax cut that was mainly just to allow big companies to repatriate their own money. The first tax plan was way better than the one that ended up coming out. It's like one of my first podcasts where I go over what the initial tax cut was at the time. That's, of course, he had to then play to the big S&P 500 companies, not to the Americans, when it's the big S&P 500 companies are the ones that hated Donald Trump, and they're the ones who've been the biggest recipient. But, now they didn't make a rainy day fund, or, they couldn't handle, not having, business as usual for 2 weeks. And now we've got to give, all these guys who spent 96% of free cash flow, talking about the airlines, we've got to give them all this free money because it's not enough. But now, as part of the stipulation, I'm not sure if they cut it out or not because there's been so many bills going back and forth, and maybe Chris knows that I did see some scuttlebutt, and initially they weren't allowed to buy back their own stock, and now they might be able to. So I'm not sure at that. But anyways, the companies don't have the cash to do anything, let alone buy back their own stock. And so I expect that buybacks cut in half to actually shrink to eventually cutting down to like 25% to eventually cutting down even further, unless they're just using this free money to then buy back their own stock if they allow them to or not. And, guess what? You shouldn't be you should be selling the stock that you bought back at all-time highs like idiots. You should be selling that back and then getting that stock back out there to the ethos and using that money to recapitalize yourself, not using my tax money. And that does not make me some sort of libtard, because I don't want the government stepping in and basically creating this fascistic type system that's absolutely going crazy. And then their actions and then leading to civil unrest. We see looting waves going on in New York City amid this coronavirus crisis, where I think I saw somewhere in the article that, they say, here we go, a record 75% jump in burglaries. I mean, who would have thought that, letting all these people out would, do that?
Well, and didn't they say that they were no longer going to arrest people for burglaries and stuff in all these big cities? So, yeah, I mean, no wonder we had a record number of gun purchases in March.
Yeah, and then you've even got, just kind of skipping gears a little bit away from the market, but you've got even Joe Rogan saying he'd rather, vote for Donald Trump than vote for Joe Biden. And so, and I've been saying this all along, that I really did think that Trump was going to lose the second he picked Jerome Powell as the Fed chair, and everyone said that I was crazy, because everyone would say, well, Tim, what's your big problem with Donald Trump? And I would say, this is going on like almost 4 years now. I would say, it's the economy. And they're like, wait. You're mad at Donald Trump because of the economy? And I would say, yes, I am super pissed at his managing of the economy, because he managed to make this bubble that we're already in even bigger. Then when he pops it, more people can get wrecked. And then all the conservatives, and I'll put that in air quotes, we're going to be the ones who get the blame. And I'm not aligning myself with Donald Trump and the Republicans. I hopped off this train a long time ago, was telling people they need to be wary of everything that's going on. And so I hate being right on this stuff. I really do. But at least we're not quite like Nazi Germany, according to some places where we do have, and I'll give credit where credit's due, in Maine, they have sheriffs that are saying this is not Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia, where you were asked for your papers. Oh, wait, that's Delaware. So you've got a freedomphoenix.com. A good friend Aaron Hancock is reporting on this, where Delaware State Police are authorized to pull over out-of-state drivers during pandemic simply for creating the crime of being out of state. And I think you had sent me an article, I don't have it up now, where it was about like liquor stores, people crossing states. Can you go into
Delaware, where it was either finding people or pulling people over from Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania, all the liquor stores were closed, so people in Pennsylvania have to drive across state lines to get, booze. Like, this is back in the 1920s, not the 2020s. It's the Prohibition era in Pennsylvania right now. So they have to go to Delaware, and there was a huge backup on I-95 into Florida, because they were stopping people to look for people from New York. And then Rhode Island was going door to door with the police department and the National Guard to identify people who came from New York. So they were forcing them to self-isolate for 14 days. And I could go on and on about the ridiculousness of the different states right now and how they're enforcing papers, please, across the country.
Yeah, I mean, the last little anecdote story I want to bring up with that is back when they had, and it's weird because when I was born, my dad was he just turned 20. So he was in this weird period where he, at 18 could drink. Then they changed the law to 19, so he could drink, then couldn't drink. Then he could drink, then he had me, then couldn't drink, and then he could drink again. And so then people, what they would do is they would then go across state lines. And so let's say you're in New York and you go to Pennsylvania. And so then we're not advocating, drinking and driving, obviously, but what people would do is that they would then go to other states and drink and go to a bar and then drive home 10 times further, which then was increasing the likelihood of them getting into accidents, which then goes to show government effing things up more, just like usual. And so there's always, opportunity cost. But anyways, we're drifting out of stuff that has to do with the market. So, I'm expecting the market to probably, when the futures eventually open up pretty soon here, that we're going to see some negative news because of this whole Saudi Russia deal. And I really think that, with a lot of people thinking, oh, it's a quick V market recovery right back up, that means that we're not going to be in that. Not financial advice. If you want financial advice, check out thelibertyadvisor.com. Quick shameless plug. But yeah, we're just here to give you guys information on what's going on. You guys can check Chris out at Zaphoid, Zaphoid, on Twitter. He's also super active in our Discord that we run with John Snyson as well. So all of my articles that I share on a daily basis go right into there. I've been super busy, obviously, making these videos, doing videos with Josh Segerson over at World of Turner Media. And also, you guys can check out a recent video or audio that I did with Sam Tripoli, where I was on the Conspiracy Farm and Tinfoil Hat all at the same time, which that was awesome, being able to expose the Fed to those audiences. But anyways, we appreciate Chris coming on. Always a wealth of knowledge. He'll be back, I'm sure, especially maybe to talk about some crypto. That's one of the things that he is super knowledgeable in. But anyways, till next time, Picciott and Chris Karabats signing off. Change the news. Take care, guys.
Sayonara.